Well, if you're talking about how does the International Space Station avoid running into things, we have a really big control team on the ground that makes sure that the orbit of the International Space Station does not run us into anything we wouldn't want to, because there are other satellites and spacecraft up here in orbit around the Earth, and so that's something obviously that we would be very concerned about. Well, we did mention, I already mentioned that we think fire would be very, very dangerous on board the space station. We also worry about having a leak of our air overboard if there was a puncture in the side of the International Space Station somewhere. And then we also worry about the leakage of hazardous materials, because some of the things that we work with up here are potentially hazardous, and we wouldn't want that to leak inside the space station. But the way that we deal with that is we train for it all the time. In fact, earlier today, my crewmates and I were practicing emergency scenarios, just like we did on the ground before we launched up here. We practice it all the time. Well, I mentioned one of the experiments that we were doing with the mouse cells. So that one is biological in nature, and I also mentioned another one where we're looking at burning, how things burn, and that's a subject called materials science. But we also have some medical projects up here where the astronauts we actually serve as the subject ourselves. We have resupply vehicles that arrive every couple of weeks. In fact, we had one called Cygnus arrive earlier this week that we captured with the robotic arm, and it brings a resupply of a variety of things, and food is one of them. But in terms of developing a sustainable food supply, we also have an experiment where we have grown plants in space, plants that we can actually eat, because if we want to go further, deeper into space, to Mars, where the journey itself would be a year, 2 years or more, having the ability to grow our own food would be a very valuable thing. Well, almost every moment of our day is scheduled for us, and so most of our time is accounted for, but in terms of how we spend our free time, we spend it with our crewmates, because they're also our friends, and we also spend time looking out the window. We talk to our family, and we even sometimes just watch movies and television shows, just like you would on Earth. Well, we take very important measures to make sure that we don't bring anything on board that somebody would be allergic to, but we do have medicine in case somebody was to have an allergy. We have medication that can treat that. Well, if we were out on a spacewalk and somebody's suit broke, then our first priority would be to get them back inside the airlock and repressurize them and get them back inside the International Space Station. The spacesuits that we currently use are very reliable, though, and we do know how to fix them, and there are some simple repairs that we can do even when we're out on a spacewalk. Well, I think definitely being away from my family, because even though, while it does often look like in the pictures and videos of us that we're always having a good time, we do actually miss our families too. It doesn't make it any easier to be away from my family. I'm married and I have 4 kids, and in fact, some of my kids are about your age. Well, because we're up here and not in contact with other people, we kind of live in an enclosed environment here, so nobody gets the flu and nobody gets cold, so it's kind of nice. I'm not looking forward to that when I come back to Earth. About 2 months into my mission, we had a period of time where we had 9 people on on board the International Space Station.